Hello and welcome back to the Barbie Experience podcast. I am your host, Isabel Diapa, also known as Belle, and in some circles, also known as Roller Skate Barbie. If you are new, welcome. This podcast explores our experiences with Barbie. Perhaps you owned Barbies as a kid or borrowed Barbies from your siblings or cousins, or maybe you were forced to play with Barbies with your siblings and cousins. Whatever the experience in this podcast, I am interviewing writers, actors, influencers, and many more really cool people on what it was like for them growing up with Barbie. We will be discussing Barbie's legacy, favorite dolls, and why Barbie has become such an icon. I am super excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Gabriela Ramos Tavarez. Gabriela is a queer Afro-Puerto Rican writer, critic, comedian, and lifelong Barbie fan based in Atlanta, Georgia. Her writing is about the intersections of pop culture and race, Latinidad, gender, disability, sex, and sexuality. And she has been featured in outlets like Refinery 21, Autostraddle, Film Days, and Bitch Media. And you can find her on Twitter at GABA underscore RT. So let's bring Gabriela into the stream.
Hello.
Hi, Gabriela. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So real quick, can I don't know if I have a typo with your Twitter handle. Did I say that correctly? Is
Uh,
it
yeah, it's,
GAA
y-
underscore RT?
yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Awesome. Um, well, I'm very excited to talk all things Barbie with you. So let's just dive right in. So Gabriela, I know that you are a writer, but can you give us a little more information about you and at what age would you say that you started playing with Barbies?
Well, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I actually don't really remember a life without Barbies. My mom is also a huge Barbie fan. And I actually asked her before this podcast, like, hey, did I love Barbies and you bought them for me, or did you buy them for me and I ended up loving them? And she told me that it was that. She, growing up, also loved Barbies. She grew up right after the time when Barbie stopped having like the eyes apart and became more of the standard Barbie.
Uh-huh.
So for me, it's always like I don't remember like actually receiving my first one, and I think it was like days before my fourth birthday, the first Barbie movie came out. So that was just my entire childhood was just consumed by Barbie. It was my favorite toy, my favorite movie franchise. I had like anything Barbie that I could get. I tried to get it for Christmas or birthdays.
That is awesome. Uh-oh. Okay. um, that's awesome. And it's actually, it's really cool because throughout these conversations, a lot of the conversations that I have had has been kind of like the inheritance of Barbies and kind of like the passing down. So like, would you say that your mom, like, were you playing with some of your mom's dolls when you were a kid, or like, did she buy dolls for you that weren't hers?
I didn't play with my mom's dolls, but I do know that some of the dolls that I had were gifts from one of my mom's friends. And even when we would like bump into him at like the supermarket or places like that, I would be like, "Oh, he's the one that gave you the Barbies, right?" So I did have Barbies that I got from like maybe older cousins and things like that, but I don't think I ever got a Barbie that my mom like kept from her childhood.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool though. I like when I was a teenager and I gave up my Barbies, I gave my Barbies because I also lived in Puerto Rico for a while. I wasn't born in Puerto Rico. I actually was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and then my family moved to Puerto Rico when I was in like second grade. And so there was a little bit of back and forth, but like it was like from second to like ninth grade. Um, and I remember like there was I lived in like an apartment complex, and there was these girls that they would come over to my house, and then like once I hit like 15, um my basically, 15, all of a sudden it's like quinceañera, like
Mhm.
okay, you're a woman, it's time to give up your dolls. And so I like gave my dolls to like the girls in the neighborhood. So like I wonder now, I'm like, I wonder if they gave them to somebody else. I have to track them down. So what are some of your most favorite and memorable dolls? Like do you have any dolls, any Barbie specifically that you're like, this girl was my girl?
um, I do. Growing up, like I said, my mom, like, she realized that I also like Barbie, so she got me as many as I could. I have, still do, it's at my parents' house, a collection of the Disney princesses up to maybe 2011 in Barbie, like Barbie form. And I had, like, when I was a kid, I had them like all like displayed. And every Christmas, I was just like wondering, or every birthday, like, which is the new Barbie I'm gonna get. And I really love. I've always loved Beauty and the Beast, and I got a Belle, but with the blue and white outfit, and I really loved that Barbie. I also, I kind of stopped playing with Barbies for some time. I was about 8 years old,
Mm.
and then had like a summer where I was just at home all the time, and I pulled out my Barbies again. And there was this a black Barbie that had kind of like a 70s dress, and I loved like to do hairstyles on her and play with her. She was like my favorite Barbie, at least in that period where I was playing with them. I also had Barbie and the Nutcracker came out, and I got the Prince and Barbie, and I love that Barbie because you could like put her leg in ballet positions, and I was also taking ballet classes at that time, so I remember just being obsessed with that Barbie in particular. And it was one of the few Barbies that I had that had like curly hair, which I
Mhm.
also liked because I always had like a complicated relationship with my hair. So those were some of the ones that I remember that are like, when I think of Barbies, those are the ones that start like coming to mind.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. It's interesting that you mentioned Disney princess dolls because like they were also made by Mattel, and I think it's super fascinating how like Barbie is like Barbie has turned into like Kleenex. And that, like, everything like, Kleenex is technically a brand, but, like, every tissue paper we call Kleenex, and the
Mm,
same thing I feel like goes for, like, Barbie, that it's kind of like, if the dolls could share clothes, then they're all Barbies.
yeah, for sure.
And I felt the same way. And I know that you write a lot about like gender, and I'm just super curious, like growing up playing with dolls, did you ever, and especially like playing with like the princess dolls, did you ever feel like working like playing with the dolls um either made you feel more inclined of like, did it make you think about gender and gender identity when you were playing with the dolls, or did, like, gender matter when you were playing with the dolls, or was it just kind of like, "These dolls are these dolls"?
Um, I don't think as a kid I ever really thought about it. I was like a very girly girl, so everything that had to do with like fashion and the color pink and dolls, I was very into, and I always embraced it. I do remember that I was never a fan of Ken's, because when I wanted to like pair up my Barbies, it just he I know that he's like, they kind of go back and forth with him being the best friend or the boyfriend, but the only Ken I had I think um he had like really big curly hair. It was kind of blonde, and he just didn't seem like. My mom used to call him Justin after the American Idol like finalist because he looked a lot like him, and I was just like, I don't like him for my Barbies. I usually ended up pairing them up with my brother's Max Steels, and that's like the only thing that I remember like really being aware of in terms of gender and Barbie.
Oh my god, so that's hilarious that you mentioned Max Steel, because so my boyfriend, he's like, "So you know that Barbie's real boyfriend is Max Steel, it's not Ken." And he's like, "If the new Barbie movie does not make a reference to Max Steel, I am going to riot." So I think it's hilarious because I was like, "What?" I was like, "I never had a Max Steel. I don't know what this is." Because like I'm the oldest, and my brothers, they didn't really play with like action figure. Like they're 6 years younger than me, and so like they were super into like video games and Pokemon. Like they really weren't into like the action figures, so I didn't have like any toys to steal from them. And like I'm older enough that by the time like they were playing with stuff, I kind of was like moving on to other things. So I feel like I missed out. I'm like, who is this Max Steel and why is he Barbie's boyfriend?
Yeah, I remember that for me, that was like the male equivalent of Barbie growing up. And my brother's only 2 years younger than me, so we were kind of both kids during the Max Steel craze and that period of Barbie. So we just kind of we got our collections at the same time.
That's awesome. Does your brother still have the Max Steel dolls?
I think he ended up giving them to me, and I'm not sure if I kept them with my Barbies. I probably did because it's like at least 3 or 4 boxes of Barbie still in my old room.
Hmm.
But I definitely he was more of an action figure kid. He loved like having like models and like dinosaurs and Max Steels. But he then like turned into a preteen and was more like into Pokemon and cartoons and things like that. So I don't think like if I probably kept them, or if he tried to throw them away, I was like, no, let me keep them. Like those are my Barbie's boyfriends. Don't throw them away.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so actually, it's funny that you mentioned action figures. So, I was at WonderCon last weekend, and I did a cosplay of Barbie, and it was actually super interesting. I was the only Barbie that I saw there. I like did the 1959 bathing suit.
Mhm.
I had like a high ponytail, and like as I was like walking around the showroom from, a lot of people were like, "Oh my god, she's Barbie! Oh yeah, she is Barbie!" And it was just like super fun. And I made this mention that I was like, I feel like a doll among action figures because a lot of times like, when people go to cons, they do action figures. And so like behind me, I have like my mini collection, and I have like my Barbies right here. And then on the other side, I actually have a mix of like Barbies that are from movies slash a couple of action figures. And I'm super curious. This is something that I've recently realized. And so like now I'm like, oh, I need to include this into the podcast, and I want to like ask this of everyone. Um, Looking at the Barbies and looking at action figures and thinking about like my own play growing up, I was like, I think that what made Barbie for me so special is that like she had hair that I could brush because I also have curly hair, and I'm like, complicated relationship with it. And it's like she had hair I could brush, I could change her clothes. Like it was all about the accessories, and like there was so much imagination that I could like put on there. And I feel like I never cared for action figures as a kid because it's like I loved X-Men as a kid, but it's like, okay, if I play with Rogue, then it's like she's only Rogue. Like I can't change Rogue. I can't change her hair. I can't change her clothes. I can't make her into anything else. And so like I'm kind of wondering like, is that something that maybe you experienced as well, of like, preferring dolls over action figures?
um, like I said, I was like a huge girly girl. So to me, like action figures were like boys toys. Like that was like what I play with if there wasn't anything else to play. So, but I do remember like that was a huge appeal for me with Barbie. I wanted to be a fashion designer from like age 8 until I was like 13. So
Uh-huh.
having like dolls that you could change their outfits and style them was definitely a huge factor for me. And the I've always liked how you can manipulate Barbie's body because action figures kind of have like these little like very visible joints, and they're hard to like make them stand up. But with Barbie, she seemed more like a person in that sense compared to other toys, which is something that I always enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's interesting. Now, okay, so when you were playing with dolls, would you say that growing up it had either a positive or a negative impact on you?
Um, can't really think of any negative impact. I've always I feel like I've always been a writer. Like even my idea of playing was just coming up with an hour long movie that I could use my toys with. And I do think that my relationship with Barbie evolved as like I became older, and I when I turned about 13, I was kind of like done with like girly things, and I kind of rejected femininity in a way, and coming kind of rounding off back to that like into like very recently to kind of like embracing like feminine things and the things that I really liked as a little girl. So for me, Barbie, when I think about Barbie, it's just for me like happy memories. I can't really think of anything. Like I know there's a lot of talk about like her when I was growing up, especially about like unrealistic body type and that sort of thing. But for me, I never really thought about it because for me, like no doll is really like person shaped. So I was never really looking at Barbie. Like if I took her clothes off, like she had no belly button, she had nothing except what I could see. So for me, it was just like I wasn't looking at Barbie and being like, I wish I was thin like Barbie. I was just more thinking like, I wish I had her outfits. I wish I had her car or her pool, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny that you talk about, like, taking off her clothes because it's like, I remember being a kid and, like, playing with Barbies and, like, I remember, like, seeing some of the adult women in my life naked for the first time and just, like, being, like, in awe that people had nipples. I'm like, "Why does Barbie not have nipples?"
Yeah, because when you're a kid, you're just like nipples are nipples. So why wouldn't they put them on the doll?
Yeah. And, like, it's funny because it's like, now I think about it, I'm like, "Okay, so they put panties, like, they had, like, plastic panties." I'm like, "Why didn't they just put a plastic bra on her?" Like,
Yeah.
that way, like, instead of, like, just having her be nippleless. But anyway, divergence a little bit. But, I really I do wanna, like, go back a little to what you were talking about, like, rejecting early things. Because a part of, the exploration of this podcast, is comes it stems from the Barbie movie coming out that I'm super excited about, and I think that everyone who, like, played with Barbies growing up is very happy for this movie because they have those types of, like, happy memories. And so, like, I'm curious though, like, why did you feel that you had to reject those girly things or femininity? Like, what was associated with it?
I'm not really sure. I know that I definitely stopped like playing with Barbies when I was around 11 or 12. So when I was like just completely going into puberty, and I was just trying to like find like who I was. And I think media also played a big role in that because usually like the mean girls were like the most feminine ones, and like girly things were associated with like lack of intelligence or like uh dubious morality. So I was like, I don't want to be like those mean girls. I want to be more. I thought well rounded. I was like, oh, I'm not like a girly girl, but I'm also not a tomboy. And I think a huge element of that was the fact that I was queer and I didn't know it. So the only way that I could find like a way to express that was just through kind of trying to balance myself between feminine and masculine interests. And I also felt that like being like that girly was something for when you're like a little girl. And I was like, I'm a teenager now, so I'm gonna be into things like Harry Potter or Disney Channel rather than Barbie because Barbie's what I liked when I was a little kid.
Yeah. And do you feel like now that you're older, like, did you have a moment where you kind of like went back to Barbie or like you went back to those feminine things?
Um, yeah, I think since I graduated high school, I've definitely felt more comfortable in embracing like my more girly interests. And I'm still, yes, I would say that I'm still like not like I'm not a girly girl, I'm not a tomboy, I'm in between, but now I don't reject femininity to that extent. And I think that with Barbie, it's also like I said, like I have a lot of happy memories from my childhood. So like embracing again how much I love Barbie is a way for me to like it's I guess very nostalgic. And it's also a way to connect with people my age because whenever there's a meme about the Barbie movies, it's like I can talk to pretty much anyone that's was born between like the late 80s and the early 2000s are going to be like, yeah, the Barbie movies. Like, we all know about those. So it
Yeah.
also kind of feels very generational, which I like. I guess it makes me feel older, but I also like to have like this franchise or this piece of media that is only known to people around my age.
Yeah. Super yeah. It's actually, it's I think that's super fascinating. So I'm a little bit older than you are, and I grew up with like the Barbies of the 90s. And I feel like when like the Nutcracker movies and like which the Barbie movies, all of them, like the animated movies, they're really good.
Yeah.
Like even now I watch them and I'm like, this is actually really good. Like if I'm down, I will watch Life in the Dream House and I'm like, this is a balm for my soul. This is great. But it's very, like it's interesting that you talk about it being generational because I feel like even with Barbie, it is interesting because it's like each decade kind of has like their own what I'm realizing through these interviews is like each of us, we kind of have our own like little decade of Barbie. Like I feel like for me growing up, the like 90s Barbies, which are the ones that I tried to collect as an adult. Like I have made it my mission to try to get all of the dolls that I either had as a kid or really wanted as a kid and like could not get. And I've been lucky enough to get a few of them, but it's like I feel like the 90s Barbies were all about like hair. Like you had Hollywood hair Barbie, you had totally hair Barbie, you had glitter hair Barbie, you had mermaid, like all of it. It's just like hair. And then like the early 2000s, you get the Barbie movies. And I think it's so interesting how like media played this role. And like I'm wondering like now like what the next phase is if like, the live action Barbie movie is kind of like the next step of that.
Yeah, I think the I was very at first when they announced the movie, I was very like worried because I felt like it was like I remember when the Bratz movie came out and it was terrible, and I thought it was gonna be in that vein. But then I saw like that Greta Gerwig was gonna write it and direct it, and I love Greta Gerwig, and I feel like how she writes like femininity and female characters is so great. And then the trailer came out, and I was just like, okay, so this is gonna be like the Barbie movie that I would like to make, and that was really exciting for me because, like you said, it's, like we've never really had like a proper live Barbie live action movie before, and the fact that it's being made as sort of like a prestige film is probably going to be like playing in festivals. It has like one a like A-list actors starting in it. Is really exciting because the Barbie movies were just like straight to home video, and they would show them on I think it was Nickelodeon, but they weren't something that like anyone and everyone could watch. So I'm hoping that with the Barbie movie there might be like a renaissance, so to speak, or kind of a shift in how Barbie's perceived overall, outside of like a toy for girls or a toy that like we all remember playing with when we were girls. So yeah, that's definitely very exciting for me. And I also feel like for me Barbies weren't just the dolls. I also had like the DVDs for the movies. I had a stay. I don't remember the term now, but those like albums where you had to like collect the stickers and fill out every one. I
Mhm.
had one for all the Barbies of the world, and I was obsessed with that book. I wanted to get all the stickers. I never could, but I got the Puerto Rican one, which was very I was very excited.
Yeah.
And I also had like a just like a disembodied Barbie head that I could comb. I had Barbie lunchboxes, Barbie bags. I had books from I think those books are pretty old, like late '90s, of like Barbie adventures, like
Yes.
Barbie horse riding and that kind of thing. So for me, Barbie has always been like more than the doll. Like my
Yeah.
first introduction to like a like transmedia and like some like I guess an IP was definitely Barbie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it's funny because a lot of people forget that for a while there was even a Barbie comic by Marvel Comics. Like, it's hard to find them. Unfortunately, I'm really sad because like I do have a Marvel Unlimited and like the Barbie comics are not in there, which I should write them a letter and be like, hey, technically Barbie is a Marvel property. Let me read this. But no, absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right. And I think that, it kind of goes back to what you had mentioned earlier about like when you were rejecting like femininity and girliness, that like for some reason in our society it has been something that is kind of like demeaned. Like it's seen as like something like you had said, that it's like, oh, the mean girls are like super feminine and I don't want to be that, or like it's seen as being dumb and I don't want to be that. And so like I think that like I'm really hoping like with the Barbie movie and like just kind of like this overall Barbie renaissance, that it's like we can claim femininity and also be all the other things that we are, which is like strong and smart, because like Barbie is all those things.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
remember something that definitely changed the way that I saw Barbie was Toy Story 3, because Barbie was just like take no prisoners. She was a leader. She was always
Yes.
calling out people on what they were doing. And that for me was like I just kind of sat and I was like, you know what, Barbie is pretty cool, and I don't know why she's often reduced to just like this like pretty blonde that you put dresses on her, because like even the books I had, like Barbie went to the moon, Barbie was a scientist, Barbie was a horse rider, Barbie was a philanthropist, so she just kind of can do it all. But at least when I was a teenager it was just like, oh, like Barbie's just this girly girl, this princess who like likes to go shopping and fashion and getting her makeup done. That was it.
Yeah. She's a badass. And it's interesting. So like now with Barbie, when I was younger, she was kind of inclusive, but like, they had like different Barbie like races, but like now she is like way more inclusive. They have different body types, they have disability dolls dolls that have different types of disability. They have different sizes, like short, tall, like it's and like they're the most racially diverse doll. When you were playing with dolls, like especially like, being Afro-Puerto Rican, did you feel like you were represented or that you weren't represented when you were playing with Barbie? And like what are some of your thoughts of like how it has evolved now?
So I always, my mom, like I had Barbies of like all. I even had a redhead Barbie. I had like one Barbie. I had a lot of black Barbies. One of the another like memorable Barbie that I have because my mom never let me take her out of the box was the 2001 New Year Black Barbie.
Oh.
So for me, I never felt like I was lacking dolls that looked like me or that didn't represent me because I always had Barbies of all races, all colors. I definitely do think they've done a lot of progress in terms of body type because even though and hairstyles definitely and hair texture because even like my black Barbies just had like completely straight hair. But yeah, I really did help me feel represented having black dolls and like a lot of my dolls were darker than me, so at some point I was just like, oh, I wish I was like I had skin like my Barbies. I wish I was darker. Like I wish I was pretty like her. So I think it never really like I said, I thought of Barbies as dolls. I didn't really see them as like extensions of myself or like I didn't look to Barbies for representation as a kid, but now thinking back on it, I'm like, okay, so it was really really, I guess, ahead of its time. The fact that in the early 2000s you could get basically any Barbie, you could get the black version of Barbie, and that was something that always because sometimes on television you couldn't find um us, especially for some reason in the late 2000s suddenly like all the black shows disappeared and a lot of the Latina shows disappeared.
Mhm.
But Barbie has was pretty consistent in that, and I think that the reason why it's lasted so long as a brand is because they really keep up with the times, and their marketing is very geared towards the people that are gonna buy them. It's not like this is a Barbie, take it, you're gonna like it. It's like, okay, what do we have to do with Barbie for you to feel represented by Barbie, for you to like Barbie? And even just the something about me as a kid, and it was turns out undiagnosed ADHD, is that I couldn't decide on what I wanted to do growing up or what was really my passion. And because I wanted to, if somebody asked me like, "What do you want to do?" I'd be like, "I want to be a teacher and a nun and a doctor and an archaeologist and a painter and a singer." And the fact that Barbie could you could find a doll for Barbie in any of those positions for me. Definitely, I never felt limited or like there was something that I couldn't do or like that women couldn't be doctors or astronauts. And I think definitely growing up obsessively consuming Barbie media helped in that regard. Because in the Barbie movies that I saw, because I kind of stopped watching them when they stopped doing like the fairy tales and the adaptations and the princesses. Uh, like I have yet to see like the Dream House movies.
Mm.
But seeing like Barbie and all these adventures that usually the girl is like the damsel in distress in the fairy tales and kind of see it like a retelling where she's in control of her destiny and the men are more sidekicks than anything was definitely something that made me feel empowered and I think still informs a lot of the writing that I do, especially this whole concept of taking an old text and making it feminist. And I think definitely, like, I wouldn't say Barbie made me feminist, but I had a pretty good base as a teenager going into um, feminism because I was never really playing with toys that felt like they were forcing me into a box because I was a girl.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of want to continue to expand on like the impact of the movies because I think that, for a long time before the 2000s, and we had before the 2000s, the only Barbie movie that had existed was the Barbie and the Rockers, which came about in like the 80s, and it was to compete with Gem of the Holograms. And then they started to make I think that the Nutcracker was the
Yeah.
first Barbie movie. Um, so I'm really curious though on like the impact of story and storytelling, like with Barbie, because like before the Barbie movies, for the most part, like they were just dolls with like some sort of a gimmick, like totally hair Barbie or whatever. And it was through play that we put in stories. But then like in the early 2000s, things change. And so I'm wondering, what role does story telling play when it comes to like Barbie and expanding like the brand and the franchise?
Well, I think that first of all, it really helped to give Barbie a personality because before that we knew about Barbie, but there weren't really that many outlets or many pieces of media where we could hear Barbie talk and we could see like how she acts and what her interests are and how like she related to other people. So the Barbie movies definitely helped in that. And like you said, before you had the Barbie and you made up the story, but once if I got the Nutcracker Barbie, I saw the Nutcracker movie, so I just set out to recreate the entire movie with my Barbies. That kind of thing. I think it definitely my perception of Barbie is probably very different from someone like my mom who just grew up with the dolls. And I think it definitely, at least for me, when I was making stories with my Barbies, it kind of helped me expand my horizons. And even if I didn't have like the proper outfit, I could still be like, I don't care. Like my Barbie is a warrior princess, even if I didn't have the warrior princess outfit. Is the fact that I could I had seen Barbie in action, so I could recreate it. It didn't all have to come from my mind. It was kind of like almost fan fiction about Barbie with the Barbies, like the physical Barbies. And I think it
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, to this day, some of my favorite media to consume and my favorite writing to do is just kind of retelling, feminist retellings of fairy tales, of princess stories. So it's definitely very I think like when Disney started doing like the live actions and trying to like make feminist princesses, I was just thinking like Barbie already did that in the year like 2004. So I think that definitely helped like give not only the character a voice, but give it was an introduction into storytelling and literature, at least for me as a kid. Because a lot
Yeah.
of those movies were based on plays or on ballets, on novels. I read The Prince and the Pauper when I was like 10, and I was
Wow.
just like this is nothing like I was like this is nothing like the movie. Like I like the Barbie movie better. But the fact that I knew about this text because of Barbie, I think definitely was like I can't underestimate the impact that those movies had on me because I was like they had at least one come out every year, and as soon as they came out, I went to like the nearest toy shop or movie store and I got the DVD and I watched it however many times I wanted to watch it that day.
Yeah. Would you say that, I mean, maybe if I don't know if this would be like for your preference, because you had said that you stopped watching around like like when they stopped making like the book adaptations.
Yeah.
So would you say that like Barbie was, as far as that type of media, it was kind of like at its height when, or it's at its best when it's an adaptation like of literature versus kind of like the more contemporary looking, like the way that they do with like Life in the Dream House?
Um, I guess I don't really favor one over the other. I think it's just part because those were the movies that I was growing up, and they changed like the look and the stories, and I was like, I don't like this. Like, I'm just gonna keep watching like my teenager stuff because they're changing Barbie as I know it. But I haven't been able to see as much because even like my younger cousins have never really been into Barbie that much, so it's not like but I have like found like screenshots or like clips, and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. This is really feels more accessible. The
Mhm.
new the Barbie movies from like the 2000s forward. I feel like it's something that anyone any age could watch and enjoy, which I can't say for the movies that I grew up watching. I feel like those were very geared towards like little girls that like princesses and fairy tales. But I think it's there's still like this feminist like sub theme. There's definitely it's always like Barbie's about friendship, about caring for animals, about like taking control of your own destiny, but they just shifted it to a more contemporary time. And I think that it works, and the fact that again like Barbie as a brand keeps up with the times very well has
Mhm.
helped the movies not lose sight and stay relevant and be enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of already talked a little bit about the Barbie movie, but what are you most excited for the Barbie movie, and like do you have any expectations, especially like since you're a film critic?
Um, I guess when I heard like you said when I heard that Greta Gerwig was in charge, I was like, okay, like I trust her because Lady Bird was my favorite movie of that year that it came out, and Little Women was also beautiful. Little Women is one of my favorite books, and I love her adaptation. And I thought like is she gonna at first I thought she was maybe gonna do like a dark comedy sort of thing or go more like a satirical way, but when I saw the trailer and I saw that like and the pictures too, like the pictures that were coming out of the set where they were like in full on like Barbie outfits, I was so excited. Like I was already excited, but now I'm just like this movie. At least I know it's gonna look amazing for sure. Like they're gonna do justice to how Barbie looks and like a lot of the classic looks, and they're going to. I like at least I don't know if what we see in the trailer is gonna be in the movie, but the whole like 2001 Space Odyssey homage is the fact that they're gonna acknowledge how Barbie changed the game is really exciting. I I think like I don't really know. I know it's gonna be funny. I know it's gonna be very witty, and it's gonna be a love letter to Barbie, so to speak. But I don't really know what to expect in terms of like the story. I don't know if it's. I honestly, if it's probably even if it's not critically acclaimed, I'm gonna love it because it's kind of in the range of movies that I tend to love, and that's really my biggest expectation. Just I know I'm gonna enjoy it, and I know that it was made from a point of view of respect and love for the character rather than like mocking it or trying to like revamp it or like I think was it Wings that they did like an edgy version like they're doing like edgy versions of a lot of media like Riverdale and all of this.
Oh,
The
oh,
fact
oh,
that
oh.
Barbie's just sort of embracing the aesthetic and the camp, I think is really reassuring. And I hope it sets a precedent that you don't have to do like edgy Powerpuff Girls, you don't have to do edgy Wings or anything like that. You can just present the character as it is, and adults are still gonna want to watch it, and it can still be like good and quote unquote prestigious.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you like 1,000%. And it's really funny because it's like I felt like growing up, I kind of had like a lot of similar experiences to like what you were talking about, and that that feeling. And I still sometimes like I grapple a little bit with like, why do I feel so ashamed of liking certain things, particularly like, ultra like girly feminine things like Disney princesses or like wearing pink and Barbie. And it's very I think that like one of the really cool things about Barbie, so it's like once I in around 1995 when Xena Warrior Princess came out, like that was like my favorite show. I love that show. To this day, I still love that show. I'm currently rewatching it, but I think that it's kind of like I think that Barbie was like such an inspiration growing up, because it's like yes, you can be anything, but also like you can be anything while not having to like always be guarded. And I think that, like, that's something that's, like, very special and, like, super, like, undermined a little, that it's kind of like you can like Barbie in a world, she can do whatever she wants. She does all these great things, and she can be a badass, and she does not have to carry around a sword and a shield. And like I love Xena Warrior Princess because I do feel like on a daily basis I do have to like carry on around like a metaphorical like sword and shield and kind of like defend myself, because like we live in a patriarchy and the world is messed up, and especially towards like people who are not men, like especially like people who like whether you're a woman or non-binary, it's very it's not like the feminine is not something that is respected, I feel, in our society. And so like it is really cool. I agree with you on like to see that this movie, they are giving like Barbie the respect that she deserves, and that like you don't have to like change her. You don't have to make her edgy, and like you don't have to give up like on pink to be strong. I agree. That's like I love how you put that. Yes. So my last question, and I think we kind of already know the answer based on like this whole conversation. Do you think that Barbie has the potential, or if she already is a feminist icon?
I think that I wouldn't say that she's always been, just because of the time period where we first see Barbie, and I often, um, I don't remember I don't know if my mom ordered them or if we got them from someone, but I remember seeing like these vintage Barbie catalogs as a kid, and usually they were just very she didn't get to do as much as she has been able to do with the times. It sort of felt like they were like these pin-up dolls almost, and they all like looked exactly the same to me, and the outfits looked like very uncomfortable. But I feel like with the times, as conversations about gender equality have come up, and conversations about the impact of media, I think that because Barbie like is stays with the times, and is they're able to and willing to like rebrand and expand the idea of Barbie, at least since I would say since the 2000s, which is when I started consuming Barbie. I think that she's definitely a feminist icon, just because like you said, like it shows that you can be feminine and also do the things that you want to achieve in life, and you can kick ass and still be feminine. There's nothing wrong with embracing fashion, embracing makeup, embracing hairstyling. And there's also, I think, something that I've always loved about Barbie is the emphasis on sisterhood, both with like literal sisters. I don't have any sisters, but I remember just really loving the Barbie movies, because at least the first few started with Barbie telling Kelly a story to teach her a lesson. And that's something that I always really enjoyed. And just the way that she's always had like a huge circle of friends, And I also, growing up, I was also really into My Scene, which is
Oh,
like a
yeah.
like another, like it was like a spin-off of Barbie, and they had movies too. And I remember in both movies Barbie fought with a friend, but then they talked it over, and in the end they were just honoring each other's feelings but still coming together, enjoying like their youth together. And that's something I think that is also really important to me about Barbie. This emphasis on like the power of female friendship and sisterhood. Because I think like you can't be a feminist if you don't like other women, don't want to relate to other women. Because at the end of the day, like we're all in this together, and we have to have each other's back. And Barbie has always, at least in my experience, encouraged that. And I feel like with this last waves of feminism, because we're also embracing femininity more than it was being embraced like 20, 30 years ago, it also allows that space for Barbie to be as she is, very girly and pink, when not be unfeminist for that. And it's nothing wrong or like demeaning for little, sorry, there's nothing wrong or demeaning in little girls playing with Barbies, because it's not like with baby dolls where it's kind of like you're being a mom to her. Like Barbie can just be your friend who's doing really cool things, and you're looking up to her and you're like, I want to do that. And that could be anything from being a veterinarian to being president.
Yeah.
And now in the 2020s, there's a Barbie that looks like almost everyone, which didn't exist before. And I think that also adds to her, how iconic she is and how feminist she is. The fact that as feminism becomes more inclusive of other people and other gender identities and body types and disability and hair textures, Barbie is also doing it. So yeah, I would say that especially in the last maybe since the 90s, Barbie and feminism have been definitely hand in hand. If not, I mean, I'm not under the illusion that it's because Mattel is like feminist, but they just know that conversations around women and girls have changed, and they changed Barbie with them, and that helps her stay current. And she is current because she's a feminist icon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Okay, that on that note, awesome, super high note. We are going to end this conversation, but I have really loved having you here, Gabriela. Thank you for coming on and talking to me sharing your Barbie experience. Where can people find you on social media? And do you have any new shows or projects or books or anything that you want people to know about?
So you can find me on Twitter at Gaba, GABA underscore RT. On Instagram as Gabriela RT underscore underscore. And right now, if you're in Atlanta, I participate. I used to be the co-host, but now I'm just supporting a what the only women and LGBTQ priority open mic in Atlanta. It's called Lavender Lab. So if you're uh, a woman or if you're queer and you want to see some comedy or perform some comedy, Lavender Laughs. Check it out on Instagram, lavender underscore laughs underscore ATL.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriela, for coming on. You have been such a wonderful guest. And anyone who wants to follow me, you can find me at Isabel Estiepa, ISABELSDIEPPA. It's the same for Twitter and Instagram and TikTok And you could also follow the Barbie Experience podcast at YouTube on the Barbie Experience podcast, and on Instagram, the Barbie Experience Pod. Thank you so much. Thank you so much again, Gabriela. Thank
Well,
you,
thank
everyone, for
you.
listening. And I will talk to you guys later. All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.